Welcome to a Talking in Stations special. This is State of the Alliance. In this case, it is for Pandemic Legion, so this is called State of the Legion. I am Matterall. I'm joined today by Elise Randolph, who's going to be off screen, as well as Ron, USMC. Elise is from Pandemic Legion, and Ron is from Test. How you doing, Ron?
I'm doing fantastic.
All right, me too. And Elise, I don't know if you have a break to talk, but if you want to say hello.
Yeah. Hey, how's it going, everyone? I'm excited as everybody because I have no idea what's going to happen on this thing. It's the first time PL's ever done something like this, so excitement abounds. I have a feeling it's people have been speculating about what it might be. I have a feeling they're all going to be let down, but who knows?
Yeah, the thing is that we don't know. We haven't been briefed. There's no notes telling us what's going to be discussed. So we're in the dark as well, but we're covering this live by request of Pandemic Legion. Again, we want to say that Talking in Stations is available to carry any State of the Alliance live. Just let us know and we'll cover it.
Yeah, I think it's something that alliances might be interested in doing, especially like smaller alliances, to get their name out there, just to show what their leadership is like. So it's a cool venue to have if you guys are in a smaller alliance.
Ron, what is a State of the Alliance?
It's really just a way to kind of set a direction or, maybe announce a campaign or some sort of check-in, right, from the, leadership to all of the line members and everyone else. And also, they're used to kind of talk about what recently happened, right? Like, so here's the past 3 months, and it kind of gives everyone a nice direction or a purpose, right? I
Right.
mean, I like them. I think they're great, and I'm excited about Pandemic Legions because in game, obviously, mortal enemies. Out of game, bunch of nice guys, but solid strategists, right? Like I'm interested. Maybe it won't be earth shattering, but I'm interested to see what their next move is, right? And their next 3 to 4 month outlook.
And it's very much something that has like historically been considered kind of like a locker room type thing. These updates, they've been like by PL, for PL, like just internal only. They very rarely leak. Every once in a while, when a State of the Legion leaks, it's kind of a big thing. So it's a cool transition moving from this like closeted little announcement to a public thing. So I'm curious to see what it's going to be like. And like Ron said, it's always fun to see how other alliances run their State of the Legions. Like these things have been going back a long way. I know for PL, it's gone back since the beginning of their formation. State of the Goonion also kind of started at the same time. I know PL and Goons started doing this around the same time. Like old school alliances did this back in the day. So
How many people usually attend these events? I'm sure it depends on alliance size, but for PL, how many people usually show up?
Well, PL, this is going to be a first time thing. I assume probably like 80% of the active people are going to. I mean, it is Sunday afternoon, so some of them will be watching sports and stuff or doing things with their families. But I think people will tune in some way, shape, or form. About probably 80% or so. I've seen when Test Alliance have done this a while ago, and Goons have done this. They've literally crashed their mobile servers trying to do these types of things.
All right, we're just getting word that Headliner will be in a minute, so we expect this to start relatively on time. Want to welcome you to this is a coverage of State of the Legion from Pandemic Legion. We're waiting to hear from Headliner, who's going to be discussing the plans of his alliance to his alliance, and they're going to find out, just like you're going to find out, what's going on with Pandemic Legion in the next few months. You were talking about security, Elise. What are some of the, or Ron, what are some of the things that people do as far as alliance architecture goes to secure the information from getting out to the public?
Well, something that PL used to do back in the day, we don't do it now anymore. We have different things that I won't go into. But back in the day, before our original forms got leaked, it was pretty secretive with our posts. For things like State of the Legions, what ended up being done is the person writing them, either me or Shadu or Seamus, a lot of times a group effort when writing these things because there's so much info to put in. You'd find different segments of the State of the Legion, and you just rewrite it slightly differently. So you'd find 4 different segments, and you'd rewrite it 10 different ways. So every person viewing the thread would see a slightly different version from everyone else. And so if it ever leaked, you could pinpoint exactly the form account that it leaked from. And people do different types of things now. They put like a little watermarks on their forms. People, it's funny when you talk about security for Eve groups because a lot of them are similar to that of a small bank. The hoops that these people go through.
Yeah, well, there's a lot of tech people that play EVE Online, Ron here being one of them. So they know how to use these professional tools for these endeavors.
I remember the watermark on the PL forums, and someone got outed. And for those of you listening, there was a very faint, like secret number that was in the background. You couldn't really tell, but when you would screenshot the forums, someone that knew would be able to, find this specific number and then be able to tell who did it. I remember when that came out, and I was like, "Oh man, this is serious space business."
Yeah, when that finally leaked, because our forums leaked hilariously in I think 2012 or something like that. All of our little secrets came out, so we had to develop new ones. But yeah, that was one of them. The fact that we rewrote posts a couple dozen different ways, I think took people by surprise because no one really had caught on to that. But yeah, what Ron was saying before, if you took a screenshot, it would have your form ID in the background. And then also like different white spaces would also spell out your
Oh,
form ID.
wow.
So we could always be able to resolve it back to someone, which I always had fun writing State of the Legions and snippets for State of the Legions because the plan was always to honeypot it as well, right? You want people to release it.
I think it was a couple of years after it was like found out that Blizzard was doing the same thing with, this World of Warcraft, and there was like this secret code in all of the screenshots that said the IP. And I remember seeing that in the news, in like the tech news, and I'm like, is someone there from PL? Inquiry minds want to know.
Yeah, it's a serious business. You want to keep that information close. Flushing out spies is a big part of EVE Online. There's people who are highly qualified to do that sort of thing. They do it professionally, and they can do it for their friends in this game. So back to State of the Alliance. These happen how often?
It kind of depends based on how things are going. It usually happens at the end of, as Ron was saying, it's kind of like the bow at the end of an objective, or every 6 months or so. So, like, I'm sure Tappy, I'm sure Test have a State of the Alliance after the conclusion of the winter, their war with the Winter Coalition. They're probably going to have something like that saying, hey, this is what we're going to do next. Here's what we did great. Here's what we did bad. By the way, here are really great guys that really stepped up at this point. So, that's generally the way it goes. Some alliances like to hold them really regularly, but I'm always a fan of doing it kind of after, at the conclusion of some big thing.
I love that part, by the way. I love the part where people kind of get recognized for their contributions. I just think that's just the coolest. Like, because a lot of times people that put in the most work, Logi and, maybe new FCs, they don't get that recognition, right? They're not really known. So I love that kind of stuff when people get recognized, and I just love it.
Yeah, and you can't pay people in EVE Online, right? You can give them like instant stuff,
Right?
but what motivates a lot of people, at least what I've found through running alliances, is just giving that heads up, like you're giving them the kudos.
Yeah, in some cases, that's more valuable than money. I mean, recognition from peers is incredibly valuable and motivating. All right, just to update you, we are waiting for Pandemic Legion to begin. Headliner is the executor of Pandemic Legion. And here we go. Oh, so okay, we've gotten in early. Pandemic Legion is beginning. We'll now listen in. This is Pandemic Legion, State of the Legion, beginning now.
All right, so we'll get started now. I just first like to say thank you to Matrol and McLeod for offering to stream what we're going to talk about for 10 minutes or so to the outside world for anyone who's interested to hear it. We had a leadership meeting yesterday, which kind of front runs a lot of what we were going to cover today with you guys and in the future over this winter. And we thought we'd try something a little bit different to open some ears and generate a little bit of external interest in advance of EVE Vegas, which hopefully we'll see lots of people at. So we've never really done much by way of public broadcasts or announcements in the past. And in fact, like from an alliance perspective, we've often remained fairly silent on the various forms of EVE media, with our members seldom appearing on EVE shows or making any noteworthy Reddit posts. And that's never really been because there's been a strict policy against doing these things. It's simply just because we've had limited appetite for pushing much of an external narrative outside of the alliance, and today doesn't really signify the start of that by any means either. It's just sort of we're trying something a little bit new because there's always been a narrative attached to our alliance generally, which has been generated by outsiders, which has often drawn significant speculation and attention. And recently, in fact, there has been much speculation about a potential change in direction for Pandemic Legion, which is mainly focused on whether or not we'll leave our current coalition and join another, or choose to exist as a solely independent entity. And we'll be doing neither of these things because we have always kind of existed independently throughout our history, regardless of who we've been allied to and for however long. And we're with our current allies because we have built trust with them and we've worked together for a number of years. But at the same time, Pandemic Legion is not necessarily focused on things like empire building. And there's been, frankly, far too much of an emphasis on empire building throughout the game in recent years, both on the part of the players and on the part of CCP. And we understand generally, I think, as an alliance, why big portions of the player base have invested so much time in doing this over the last couple of years. But in the same period, I think we've all come to the same realization that there's only a certain amount of benefit that can be derived from such a vast investment of time and resources for an alliance of our size. And given that our focus has often been acting as a disruptor or an irritant wherever possible, and that our reputation has often reflected that, it's probably time that we were honest with ourselves and others about where we're going to go in terms of playing the game for whatever duration it has. And this is interesting to talk about because in light of some of CCP's recent changes, which I think are generally accepted to be of quite questionable nature across much of the game, the blackout being a good example of something which was quite heavy-handed and short-sighted, which has done a certain amount of damage to both the player base and the game due to the manner in which it was implemented. These things have, I think, set in motion something quite dangerous within the player base and many alliances which are not at the top end of the sort of spectrum in terms of the amount of real people who are in there and the way that they want to go about playing in 0-0. And I think that, it's important for us as an alliance to take a step back from this and acknowledge that whilst they're not particularly good in terms of bigger picture things for the game, there is opportunity buried in each of these changes for us and alliances of our size. So changes such as the blackout did provide a good landscape for us to act as that disruptor against larger groups, and that afforded us significant additional opportunities to enhance our deployment into Torrid, in which we did indeed prove to be that disruptor on the war for the time that we were there. And that was something which was noted both by our allies and by the people that we were fighting. There'll no doubt be other wars which are starting over the winter, which is typically the more active period in EVE, and I think it will be, given that summer was kind of any activity you would see in the summer outside of the war that's just finished was kind of neutered by the series of changes that we just spoke about. And of course, we'll get involved in those wars over the winter, but not in the conventional sense, because it's time that we and other alliances our size realized and sort of acted on the fact that there's no point in alliances like ours or the size that we are, or look at the other medium-sized alliances across the game that want to have some sort of involvement in 0-0. There's no point in them existing just to be appended to larger alliances and coalitions. So in that vein, our involvement in these future wars will focus on doing similar things that we were doing in Torrid and Fabulous, which is disrupting the conventional course of that war that's happening and seeking out something slightly different to, say, your typical tie-dye and escalation by Batphone. And hopefully, if we make a success of this, we'll influence the attitude of other groups of players who want to do things slightly differently, and in doing so bring some diversity back to 0-0. And hopefully this will help mitigate the risk of entire alliances just deciding that they don't want to play anymore wholesale, exactly as Skill Yourself did earlier this year. Because this is something which really just isn't acceptable and not good for it's not good for the game at all, and it's on the player base as well as CCP to prevent that from happening again. And we as players, the part we have in this is to demonstrate that there's more to playing in 0-0 than just appending yourselves to a mega coalition. So, going forward, we'll look to operate slightly differently in that respect. And our focus on doing this will coincide with some broader changes that we'll implement across the alliance and how it's structured and how we operate. And we'll roll more of that out over the winter, and that will in turn hopefully ensure that we can remain as adaptive as possible to the next series of changes which CCP are going to overlay on the game, which are allegedly coming very soon. And there's something in the works for next week, which is why I wanted to kind of just chat generally about this now. And then, put simply, we'll focus all of our energy into hampering the ability of other people to go about their business normally, rather than attempting to build just another empire to fight another war which the game can't ultimately handle. So from an outside perspective, I guess what this section of our meeting is about is to invite anyone who finds that prospect interesting to come and check us out, because many of our corps are actually recruiting. And if not, then I guess this marks the beginning of a new chapter of us ultimately wasting people's time and being annoying because you've come and listened to 10 minutes of me talking about something which is ultimately pointless to you on a Sunday evening. So I'll take any questions on that from Matarol, and then we'll carry on with our business.
Oh, I don't know if actually you can. There, can you hear me inside your alliance?
I can hear you, but the rest of the people can't hear you.
Oh, okay. So, in summary, you're going to go back to being the spoiler style of gameplay. Is that what I'm understanding?
I think so.
And that's in contrast to the empire building and settling that a lot of alliances are doing.
Yeah, exactly.
All right. And you're saying this is in preparation of whatever CCP does in the future. Do you imagine that the game is going to swing back towards roving groups rather than empire building?
I think that they probably want to investigate that, but whether or not they'll do that effectively and quickly, I'm not sure.
Right. And so the bottom line, though, is you're still in league with Northern Coalition and Horde.
Correct.
All right. That's Ron. Do you have any questions?
I don't know if you can hear me, but I saw a lot of really tight, kind of small, medium gang action down in the South. And I was wondering, I mean, that was really powerful, what you guys were doing. I was wondering if that's the kind of style that you're looking for to move forward, to disrupt more up in the North, or is that what you were kind of getting at?
Not sure if you were able to hear that.
I'm listening to it now. Sorry. In answer to Ron's question, yes. Yeah, sorry, I could hear you, only you, but not Ron. So yeah, I basically the answer to Ron's question is yes. And we, he probably knows what we're shooting for because Ron dealt with us kind of firsthand while we were in Detroit. And that was good fun, I think, for us. Very good fun, pretty engaging, and it was a bit of a headache for the larger groups to deal with. And we put a lot of energy into that, and it was ultimately enjoyable. And had the war gone on longer, I think it would have continued for us.
A couple more questions. Are you advocating that more alliances should be independent and act in the same way as Pandemic Legion wants to act, as more as the spoiler role in the smaller ambushers?
Yeah, I think so. I think that 0-0 would benefit immensely from that.
All right. Thanks very much for taking our questions.
You are welcome, and hopefully you'll have me back on your show sometime soon.
Anytime.
All right. Thank you very much, guys.
Thank you. Okay, great. So we've left their audio at this point, so I won't have that echo. Apparently there was an echo, and that makes sense since we were listening to their comms that was cycling through. So we'll work on that for later. But just want to reiterate some of the stuff that Headliner was just talking about to his Legionnaires. They are not making any dramatic change. There was some talk and speculation, as he said, that people thought they would break away from their allies and go back to a nomadic lifestyle where they depended only on themselves. In other words, they would no longer have NC. Their sister alliance in a blue status, or Horde for that matter. Remember, Pandemic Horde is an offspring of Pandemic Legion. So that would have been dramatic news indeed. So he put all that to rest and talked about the definition of Pandemic Legion style going forward, which is more like it was in the past, where it's smaller and ambushy, rather than something that is a lot more rooted and building into a more of an empire that defends itself rather than going out on campaigns.
I think he was, kind of underplaying his role a little bit because, he is his group is a force multiplier. They small, medium gangs, but they hit really hard. Strong strategy, lots of high skill players. It was a lot of fun, and it was very problematic whenever they would be out and about. So I think it's really interesting that a named or like a storied alliance like that is pushing more towards that and just kind of staying true to their roots and opening the doors for recruitment and all that, and maybe others are interested in that sort of gameplay and what kind of disruption they can do up north is I don't know, it's fun. I like it. I think it's cool.
Elise, are you with us?
Yeah, I think, Ron hit something on the head. I think what people don't really realize about PL is if you look from year to there's massive amount of turnover, not only in it seems like a bastion of stability in some sense, but just because the corps have been in for so long and stuff. But there's so much turnover in who is running fleets, who is helping running fleets, so on and so forth. That it's impressive for an alliance to live this long. And of course, I'm super biased, right? Because it's the alliance I'm a part of. It's the alliance I ran and helped run for most of my Eve career. So but yeah, as Ron said, it is hard to get people motivated. And my takeaway from this whole thing is, hey, you know what? We tried being empire builders because that's the direction this game was going. But now we're going to be the force that we want to see in the game, whether it's going to be a successful thing or not. I personally think it will be, right? So you kind of hope that you play the cards correctly. No one likes to play and lose, but it seems like PL is definitely like towards the end of their rebuilding, a rebuilding type of phase, and they're getting back to what they've always excelled at and what they've frankly always had fun doing. Right? PL has never been one to wage a war and win a war. We've always been one to spoil a war or ruin a war, and that's about it. And so that's where a lot of members join for that reason, and that's a lot of their motivations for coming to PL, right?
Yeah, to play that spoiler role that you guys were so good at for so many years. For those of you that are not able to see this, we have an avatar, Elise Randolph, with a bunch of microphones in her face. It's so funny to see McLeod put that together. It's hilarious for this sort of thing. It is interesting that there was. It seems like it's very difficult to pick a direction in this game, and the smart money has been on settle down, create yourself a secure situation to build wealth, use that wealth to buy a military, use that military to defend the wealth building operation. And it's a cycle. And PL is basically saying, we thought about doing that since that's how you win the game these days. But even knowing that, we're going to try to do something else. And we encourage others to do that. That's the major takeaway that I've seen.
Yeah, I'm interested with his kind of suggestion that other people should follow suit for the sake of the game, be the change you want to see. That kind of seems to be the core of it, which I thought was pretty interesting.
Well, we see that in faction warfare as well. Like there seems to be a unionization of players that say this isn't necessarily what's easiest or best for us, but we think this is what will attract the best kind of gameplay for ourselves and other people. So we'll forego the money and we'll try to get the action instead.
And I think that's quintessential Eve too, right? You see the players that are so invested in the game that they decide to to take the path that's definitely not best for them, just to try and help out, or at least try and make some sort of change to get back to an area that they remember being fun, right? So I've been compiling like a lot for a presentation I'm going to be giving in Vegas at Eve History about Eve history, and it's amazing how much people look at the past in EVE Online with rose-colored glasses, and I'm looking at some of the fits and some of the doctrines and some of the play styles, and it was pretty awful. Like, frankly, the game was super broken at times, and it was absolutely terrible to play, and I just felt horribly stale. So even when people say, "Oh, back in the day it was so good," blah blah blah, it really wasn't, right? So you can't
It
just
really
go
wasn't.
around. You can't just go around and say, "Oh man, Eve used to be so good. Oh, the Eve sucks now. I hate CCP," right? Because it's the players that make the game great. So
Some of those broken moments were the funniest, but
yeah, absolutely.
also some of the most tragic.
And PL's always sort of kind of been on that leading edge, right, of trying new things or new doctrines, or so it's interesting to see this sort of move. I really, I mean, and they'll probably never release it, but like I would love to see, what that kind of changes for recruitment, because I know there's a very strong, adamant player base that is really specific and loves that sort of play style. So I wonder, what that'll be like. A lot of fun.
Do you think it'll work? That's the major question. It's almost like a symbol. I think this is why it was turned into an event, which we're grateful for. But it seems like it's a symbol that's being broadcast. Hey, we're going to do the game the way we used to do the game when it was really fun for us, and we encourage other people to do that. Is it going to work in this world?
So, I think it's about image, right? Like it's about kind of being public about like your intentions. If someone just kind of posts it on Reddit or something, it's just meme to death and blah blah blah. But here it's like, hey, these are our intentions, and this is what we're going to be doing moving forward. If you want to join us, give us a shout. Like this is our play style, period. So I love that it's clear intentions. Like, hey, we still have friends. We're still going to be doing this, but we're going back to our roots and we're getting back to what we enjoy doing. So I just think the most important part is it kind of opens you up, to the rest of the player base to say, hey, um, this is, what we're going to be doing. And if you're interested, maybe you'll come along.
Yeah, and to Manuel's point, is it going to work? I have no idea. I hope it does. I mean, the bat signal works, right? Even without Batman being there, just the idea of a symbol of this thing in the sky, it works. So I mean, maybe this will work. I've got high hopes. I'm really interested to see exactly how it's going to play out. I know for the longest time, PL have been flirting with like empire building for a while, and it's really hard to completely change someone's play style in the course of a few years. And other alliances have shown that, hey, you know what, or other situations have shown that, hey, you know what, we can still have fun while being effective without being coalition builders. If you look at PL's history, and I'm definitely going to be someone that cites history all the time. I'm sorry if that's not
Oh, we love
relevant,
that.
but PL has been in coalitions that have toppled the biggest empires in all of Eve. But they've done that for like 6 months at a time. And after that, they kind of, depending on who you ask, either wear out their welcome or they decide it's not for them. So PL is the empire builder. I know it's something that Killer B was very much interested in doing when he was in PL. And that was the main impetus behind PL getting involved in World War B and the Casino War, or whatever you want to call it. I have a feeling like if Killer B wasn't around, then PL wouldn't have played as large of a role as we played in that one, right? We would have probably been on the fringe, getting good fights and the like.
Third
But
party.
ever since then, like PL has been ever since World War B, really, which is what, 2 or 3 years. PL has been committed to this empire building type of relationship, and it's interesting to see the transition moving away from that, trying that. Not necessarily giving up and failing on it, because we were able to achieve quite a lot as an alliance, but just saying, hey, this is successful, but we're going to try something new. So I'm excited to see where it goes, and that's that.
Last question. We're winding up here, but does this mean they're giving up SOV and moving around technically, or?
I'm going to assume so. I'm going to assume that part of the deal is, hey, we're going to go back to being nomadic. We're going to be moving all around. I don't know exactly where they're going. I think they're probably talking about that right now. in preparation. Probably not going to be moving until after Vegas. I have a feeling somehow these things all tend to line up that after Vegas, EVE Online kind of knows exactly the direction that the war wheels are going to churn. Part of the reason is just people meeting at Vegas and coming up with ideas. Another part is people just getting motivated, right? You hang out, you spend a week with your space friends, and you're like, shit, I want to play EVE. This is where I'm going to go. This is the direction I'm going to take. Mm-hmm. And there are a lot of, as you mentioned, a lot of big power players that are going to be at EVE Vegas in terms of nullsec. It's kind of weird to think about it that way, but it's definitely the truth. You've got the leaders of all the big coalitions that are going to be there deciding, what's going to happen.
Well, it seems to me, my analysis of this is a gamble on the future. I think he's betting that the pendulum is going to swing away from empire building because CCP has already made it clear they're dissatisfied with what that brings to the game, to the degree that it's bringing it now. Not necessarily that all empire building is bad, but just the empire building that we have now, the safe money, is bad for the game. And so I think this is a little bit of a gamble saying the future isn't what NC and Legacy and Imperium are doing. It's going to swing back, and I think it's a bet that that's what the future is, and that's what some of these announcements in Vegas will probably bring out and make clear. But that remains to be seen. It's a big gamble.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right with that, actually. And it's when we had the liberty to talk with Hilmar, and he definitely seemed to think that the empire builders have had their day, and the era of chaos is going to introduce more challenges. I think is the way he described it to veteran players, as opposed to and part of those new challenges are going to be how to live a different style of nullsec life. We saw the chaos era. We don't know if it's still there or what's going on with that. But we saw blackout, we saw local go away, we saw sign-out changes, all of these huge changes. And you can argue about how effective they were, what they did, but at the end of the day, it was pretty clear that CCP were trying to shift the pendulum a little bit more away from the defender and into the attackers.
Any last thoughts, Ron?
I sort of disagree. I don't know if it's a gamble because it's like a group of guys. They stay together. They're having fun. They're disrupting. Like it's a win. If some other people want to kind of tag along with them and do I know that in Reddit or whatnot, like they love to kind of meme and this and that, but PL is a force to be recognized, and if they're going to go up and start disrupting, over on the West Coast, please do. I think they're in for a big surprise over there because it'll be a lot of fun for all parties involved.
Yeah, and I just want to add, like Ron brings up a really good point. Like, if it depends on how you frame sort of an argument, right, or how you frame your narrative, because and this is what alliances have gotten really good at doing. I actually wrote an article about it, but didn't really like the way it read, so I kind of scrapped it. It's just a loose idea, but alliances like Goon Swarm and leaders like the Mittani and Gobbins to an extent, and Vince Draken, you have all these guys that they frame what they're going to do next in what's essentially a win-win situation, right? So as Ron says, you're just going to be guys having fun, right? So if you frame a deployment in, hey, I want to have fun, and not, hey, I want to take this boon from this person and kill 5 Titans, you can always have a winning scenario, which motivates your members. And we were talking to Norris just earlier today, and you could see just how important motivation is. He said he still holds a bit of a grudge against one of his line members that lost a big expensive ship, not because it was a big expensive ship. It didn't cost him or his coalition anything, but what it did cost is giving the enemy momentum, right? And if you could take advantage of those momentum swings, you are going to be successful in EVE Online regardless of what you do. And so a lot of this is just preserving momentum and coming up with wins for yourself.
Right. Okay, thanks very much for helping us interpret this, Elise, and telling us your takeaways. And Ron, you as well. I want to say again that Ron is from Test Alliance and Elise is from Pandemic Legion, former leader of Pandemic Legion, in fact. They've been helping us through the State of the Legion that was just delivered by Headliner, at least the public portion of it. I suppose they have a private portion that he's going to get to after that. But it's been great to hear from the audience some of the questions that were put out there, and great to hear from these two very seasoned players as well. I want to thank everybody for showing up today for this special broadcast of State of the Alliance. We offer the same kind of coverage to any alliance that wants to apply. Just let us know. We'll get set to talk about your State of the Alliance and what you guys have to say during it. We'll also contextualize it as much as we can. And that goes for move ops, declarations of war, anything that you guys feel that are big announcements, let us know, and we'll go ahead and do some live broadcasting of it. Would also like to say that we have a channel that is now specifically reserved for people who can speak on behalf of alliances, and that is something that you just let me know, Matterall, on Discord, and we'll go ahead and give you permission to post press releases, as it were. Okay, that's it. That's it for today. What we have is next week we're going to see you. We're going to have a Wednesday show, but we're going to see you in Vegas, and we're going to broadcast live. So look forward to a lot of broadcasting happening here at TIS, and articles being written on Talking in Station's website. And I want to thank all the crew at Talking in Station, specifically McLeod, who helped us with this live broadcast and did that great graphic of Elise with microphones in her face. And as it turns out, one of the things at eVegas that may happen is moving avatars, because we saw a sample of it in the scope video, which would be fantastic because we'd love to bring that kind of technology to this kind of programming. Okay, everybody. Thanks again, Elise. Thanks again, Ron. Thanks again, McLeod. And thank you for watching Talking in Stations. We'll see you next week.